talk about the circuitry and discrete as opposed to chips and the trends in analog now where people aren't really, not many people are making, quote, real, true analog these days.
Well, I think that there's a misconception about whether an analog circuit, an analog synthesizer circuit has chips or not. There's nothing wrong with chips as long as their limitations are understood. In fact, the original SEM was full of integrated circuit op amps and worked very well. However, the main philosophy of the new SEM was to make it as much as possible like the old SEM. And so rather than redesign it or try to make it, quote, better, I pretty much stuck with the old design. It's, I'd say, 98% like the old. It's identical in 98% of the old original design. It uses chips where the old one used chips, and it uses discrete parts where the old one used discrete parts. And so it's pretty much the same basic circuitry. A couple changes I had to make because a couple parts were not available anymore. But I've had several people with better ears than me test the new one and the old one, and everybody seems to agree it sounds pretty much, the new one sounds pretty much like the old one. But circuitry-wise, functionally, it's just like the old SEM. The front panel is exactly the same except for a couple very minor things, and you can actually, with a very small amount of work, you can put a new SEM in an old Oberheim.
You mentioned the front panel. Let's talk about the changes you have made in the new version. Obviously, if you can see this, there's a patch panel here.
Right. Like I said earlier, the original SEM was this. And if it was an SEM, you got this. If it was a four-voice, there were four of these, etc. But during the process of redoing the SEM, I was encouraged by a number of people who knew how the SEM was designed, in that it had a lot of internal points on connectors on the internal board to bring that out to a patch panel. And so that's what we have here. There are 33 points on the internal circuitry of the SEM that are brought out to these 3.5 millimeter mini jacks. It's pretty much the whole machine right there on the patch panel. One could say, well, I'll never use this or I'll never use that, but rather than commiserate over what to leave out, I put it all in. And it's 33 different points. Some are inputs, some are outputs. And it makes it kind of fun. Just this and a few patch cords, it's kind of fun. Like the old 2600 is fun.
Yeah, I found that I could, just with two patch cords or three patch cords, you can make sonic mayhem very quickly.
You can make a lot of sound without any patch cords, but then there's a few things here that you can try and maybe add something. But the only other real change, or a couple minor changes on this panel as opposed to the original SEM, is the original SEM had a single frequency pot, but it had a mechanical vernier. So if you turned the outside of the big knob, it would make major changes, and then there was a smaller knob which was actually just a gear, kind of a gearing arrangement that still moved a single pot, but it geared it down so you could do fine tuning.
Like an old EMS.
Yes, but the problem is that all you have to do is bump that thing, and it changes the pitch, and they get ratty, and I hated that thing. That was one of my biggest complaints about the design of that. So what I did is I went to a coarse pot, the major changes with this knob, and then for fine tuning you can use this little here.
And from what I used in the Proto, the ranges are set up really nice, so it's really
this
easy
is
to dial in.
About plus and minus a whole tone, and this is about 4 or 5 octaves here.
Right, right.
Then the other change was on the original SEM, this filter mode pot was like it is here, the low pass all the way to the left and the high pass on the right and notch in the middle, but then it had a switch like on a radio. You'd turn this and it'd click and you'd have the band pass, and that I just couldn't get that pot, so I made the band pass a separate switch. And other than that, it's exactly like the original.
Mm-hmm. And I should mention also that the notch, this is like a, when the filter's going, you can switch from low pass mode to high pass mode, and instead of it being a switch, it continuously goes, which is a really neat sound when you sweep that manually,
Yeah.
and something I haven't really heard in other synths.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know of another synth that has that.
Yeah. So let's discuss the alternative version where this patch panel will be replaced by a MIDI to CV
Yeah.
converter.
Yeah, it's the same size panel. Basically, what we're selling or what we're producing and selling are 2 different products. The expander, the SEM expander module, is identical in both models, both versions.
Right.
But in the other version, this panel here is replaced by a MIDI to CV converter that has a number of features. Of course, you can set the MIDI channel. You can set a switch that determines whether, as you play the keyboard, that whether the voice re-triggers. You can set high note priority, low note priority, or the latest note priority.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually 2 control voltages generated. One is devoted to the keyboard control. The other one, control voltage, has 3 different sources and 3 different destinations. So you have, it's like a crude version of matrix modulation, a very simple one bus, but there are three different things you can choose and 3 destinations. And then it has a 5-position transpose, it has analog portamento, and it has a gain control for a preamp that you can enter a analog voltage, which then goes over and can be selected as going into the filter here on the SEM through the
For
external
processing
input.
external sources.
Right.
But you can do that with this version as well, right? Minus the preamp.
You can do that. Yeah, you can do that without the control. There's
Right.
no preamp because this on this version, the patch panel version, this is totally passive. There's no circuitry in here.
Right.
This is just connecting to points on the board. On the MIDI to CV version, there's actually a preamp and there's a preamp gain control, so you have some control over what you do with that as far as going into here.
Did you plug a guitar into it, that kind of thing? Does it have enough gain to do that?
It'll have plenty of gain.
Wow.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for talking to me
Sure.
today. And we're at audiomidi.com. They're shipping now. We're hoping to get more soon. And
Very soon.
yeah. And if you have any questions, give us a call. And thanks for being with us, Tom.
Mitch, thank you.
Thanks, sir.